Yeah, I am an adventure sports enthusiast. You can see that. You can very well tell. But my talk is about storytelling, and it should really start with Once Upon a Time. Once Upon a Time stories are really a very, very small part of storytelling, stories that our grandma and our grandfathers would have told us. But as I said, it's a very small part, so I'm going to tell you about a different kind of a story. Now, this story is a story of a businessman, and it's an old story. It's a story when cell phones didn't exist and you still had to send telegrams. So one day, this guy had a cat named Kitty, and he loved his cat as anybody would love their child. He had to go on a business trip. He called his servant and asked him to take care of the cat, and in case of any emergency, write a telegram. Well, the servant says, absolutely, sir, I shall oblige. And he went on with his journey. 3 days later, he received a telegram, and the telegram said, dear sir, your cat Kitty is dead. I'm sorry, your servant. Now, if you were in his place, you would have been really upset. So he took the next train, and with the idea of bashing his nose into his face, got on, and on the way realized that the servant is actually a really good guy. So he would not have done this deliberately. Instead, he thought of teaching him a lesson. The lesson was simple. He went to the servant and told him that, see, when there was so much you had to tell me, you should not have given it all in one go. You should have sent me a telegram that said, dear sir, it's a beautiful day. The weather is beautiful. Your cat Kitty is playing on the roof. Then a second telegram saying, dear sir, your cat Kitty has fallen off the roof, is in the hospital. And then perhaps a third telegram saying, dear sir, she's no more, I'm sorry. The servant said, sir, I understand. I get everything that you're saying, but I will do this next time if I ever have to. Life moves on as it always done. They get another cat, call it Kitty in memory of the first cat. The servant is called up again to take care of the cat as the businessman goes on his business trip. 3 days down the line, he receives another letter. The letter says, dear sir, it's a beautiful day. The weather is beautiful. Your cat Kitty is fine. Your mother is playing on the roof. Well, it tells you a lot about communication, doesn't it? It tells you that no matter what situation you're in, there are no two ways of communicating that you can employ which will give you the same results. And that is really what storytelling is about. It's about being able to convey your message with meaning that others understand. I mean, it's very unsettling to see a lot of people work really hard to make resumes which are really different from each other, and when you get out there into the interview and you're asked a question, tell me something about yourself, guess what the answer is? I studied in this college, then I did this, this was my degree, that was my school, my parents belong from here, and well, me, well, I'm right in front of you, everything is on the resume, and it's just the same as I told you. Now, you tell me all of this effort in being different, and you're getting out there and giving the same answer over and over again, what makes you think you're special? I'll tell you what that is. That is your story. That is your story because when an interviewer looks at your resume, calls you in for the interview, he knows what's there. He doesn't want you to tell him again. He wants to know who you are. The question is, how do you tell that story? How well equipped are you to tell them when you were a little boy? How you were in a situation which perplexed you. You did not know whether to tell or not to tell, as your friends were doing something wrong, but you went out there and you told. Your friends hated you for it, but at least you could look yourself in the eye. And that one story shows integrity to a company which has its values in the idea of integrity. So what I'm really going to just talk to you about, other than telling you a couple of other stories, is how to tell a story. But let's question the question first. The question is, why, where, when, and what? Why should you tell a story? It's a very simple reason. When you go out there and talk about facts, what you're essentially doing is giving a lot of information to somebody who's been getting a lot of information from everybody else. Now, we as people are not hungry for information, we're hungry for feelings. We're hungry for emotions. You know, I mean, just imagine how would it be if somebody comes and tells you after you'd done a certain thing that, hey, you know what? I do accept the initial note that you had sent me expressing to me the perspective you had towards becoming my life partner. Or would you rather just hear, I love you too? Yeah, well, so that's really the first thing. Stories convey emotions and not just facts. That's why you should learn to tell stories. Where and when can you tell stories? Well, you can tell them really anywhere, whenever you're interacting with another human being, another person. You can tell a story because they would really, really listen to your story, understand it, feel it, and respond to you. If you tell them facts, they might just not. What is storytelling? How can you learn how to tell a story? Now, we do workshops on this where, people from different industries and organizations come attend, and it usually goes on for about, 8 to 10 hours, sometimes even more. We have 10 minutes left, so we will have to be quick on this one. And also, I would like to, at this point, edit the title of my talk. It's not how to tell a story, we'll make it how to tell your story. So let's take a look at that. There are 3 parts to any good story. Any. The first one is called the hook. The second one is called the bait. The third one is called the pull. I'm glad you can read. So I'm going to tell you another story. Okay, this is a story about fishing. Take a guess why. So once there were these 3 friends, okay, sitting on a boat. And 2 of them were old and were acquainted with the pond. One of them had moved in new, joined the same office, living in the same location. And all of them went out to take a day trip with some beer and burgers, on that boat into the pond for some fishing. It was a shallow pond. So they went out there and the first friend casts his iron. Something gets caught but doesn't know why, tries to pull it back, doesn't come back, doesn't know what to do, tries with all his might, and then something unbelievable happens. Seeing that nobody else is around, he gets up from the boat, takes 1 foot out of the boat, puts it on water, puts the second foot on water, walks all over it, unhooks the fishing rod, walks back, and sits on the boat. Now, one of the older friends I told you about wasn't really surprised. He moved on with his beer. The other guy was peeing his pants because he didn't know what to do. How could somebody walk on water? I mean, he would agree Jesus could do that, but nobody else. So, well, time moved on. The other guy's fishing hook also got stuck really at the same place, and he tried to pull it back, but with not much help. He got out of the boat, 1 foot, second foot, third foot, walks back. And the other friend by now is thinking, God, I'll stop eating fish, just get me out of this place alive. These guys are monsters or something. But then his fishing hook gets stuck at the same place. Now the things that he was thinking about have changed. What he's thinking about now is, I work with these guys. I go out with these guys. I hang out with these guys. Now if I can't do what these guys can do, what does that do to my nose? What does that do to the way they look at me? It won't be right. So he decides to take a leap of faith. He stands up on the boat, right at the corner, prays to God, takes 1 foot out of the boat into the water and sinks. Yeah, well, luckily it was a shallow pond and it didn't drown, but, out of courtesy, the other 2 friends should have, I can't believe I kept sitting like that for a while. Out of courtesy, the friends should have helped him out of the boat, but they didn't. Instead, they started laughing loudly, looking at each other, and one tells the other, you know what, I think we should have told him where the stepping stones are. Yeah, really? Now, when you want to convey a message, when you want to tell somebody something, you of course have your own story, and I can't tell you how to make it work. What I can tell you, that it would have these 3 stepping stones. There has to be something that tells them you're interesting. That is the hook. There has to be something that gives them a little more context, that tells them that, you know what, you are connected with each other. Somehow there is something in common, there's something that works, there's something that will make you believe them and them believe you. That is the bait. And then we have the pull. The pull is never anything which is based on a lie. The pull is always the truth, and the only truth that exists. Sometimes it is as simple as an intention. An intention, like 5 years ago when I told my now father-in-law that I wanted to marry her daughter, the first thing that came out of his mouth was, but you're a Chatterjee. And where the hell do they come from? Well, you can obviously tell they're not Bengalis, they don't belong to that part of our country. Now, the pull is by far the moment when you tell them the truth. I told them the truth. The truth was really simple for me. What I told them was that you are a religious man, and let me tell you the summary of the biggest religious story ever told. And the summary is, Karmanye Vadhikaraste ma Phaleshou Kada Chana. Do what you will, not just for the result. You know what? He got my point. That I will do what I will, and not just for the result. We got married pretty soon after that. Now, just to kind of put all of this into perspective, I told you about 3 important things today. When you go out to talk to somebody important, whether you're pitching for a startup, whether you're going out getting a job, whether you are convincing your dad to buy you a car, or convincing your partner to say yes to you, whatever you do, remember these 3 things. The hook, what you really want them to be interested in. The bait, something that makes them believe what you're saying is correct. And the pull, the truth and the only truth. These 3 things put together would make it work. So let me close this off with one last story. This is the story of a college kid, not unlike us, who went out to the big city to study and belonged to a small, small village. He went to the big city only because there was a temple on the top of a hill. And in that temple lived a sage which told their family that this kid is brilliant, you should send him out to college. So they mortgaged everything they had and sent the kid out. And the kid did go out. 3 years later, he came back with a t-shirt and pair of denims t-shirt which said serial kisser out here. And when he came back to the village, he figured out the whole village is decorated as if it was Diwali. But unfortunately, not one person came to him and asked him for a glass of water. So he went to his brother, he reached out home and he asked him what's going on. The brother said, see, it's not for you. All of this happened because of that Babaji. So this is all happening for that Babaji. You know. And the kid hated the idea, so he thought of a plan. He said, you know what? I can prove that this guy is nothing more than an imposter. So he took a very, very simple idea. He took a butterfly in his hand, and the idea that if I show everyone in front of the village, and I ask this person that the butterfly in my hand, if it's dead or alive, being a fortune teller, you must be able to tell, he will be caught. His plan was simple. He said, if he says the butterfly is dead, I will leave it, it will fly away. If he says the butterfly is alive, I'll crush it and it will die. Chit pat, both are mine. Heads and tails, I win. So he went to the Baba in front of the rest of the village and went with the butterfly in his hand, outright there said, sir, I know you can tell the fortune. I just want to believe it better. Will you please tell me if the butterfly in my hand is dead or is it alive? And the Baba looked at the kid and smiled and said, my son, the future is in your hands. It's not too difficult. Thank you.